Happy morning to one and all present here. Again, I welcome you all for this second session of the third day of Atal Training Program on Research Avenues and Challenges in Industry 4.0. Hearty welcome to our chief guest of the today's session and all the participants from all the colleges in and around the country. And now I would like to invite Mrs. Eileen P. Sooniadas ma'am from E&I department to introduce our today's chief guest. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Is my voice audible, ma'am?
Yeah, it's clear, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Karthik Jyotilakshmi is currently working as Principal Engineer in Mercedes-Benz Research and Development, India, Bangalore. His job responsibility includes product management of infotainment systems with interactions over head unit, telematics unit, instrumentation clusters, ADAS systems, cloud and backend integrations, parkman systems, gesture recognition across vehicle electrical infrastructure. He has 11+ years of experience in automotive infotainment system and connected car technologies and has worked for Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, Jaguar and Land Rover, Ford, Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, MAN Trucks and Coaches, Scania, Suzuki clients on infotainment systems and instrumentation clusters. He has also published publications in reputed international journals. His domain knowledge include and not limited to augmented reality, data analytics and IoT, digital mobility and shared services, gesture technologies, ADAS and autonomous driving. It is a pleasure having you for this Atal FDP session on the future of electric mobility in India, challenges and opportunities. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Eileen. Thank you. You forgot?
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Okay. Okay, so having had my introduction, and when I got this opportunity, I should also thank all the dignitaries of the organizing committee of RMD College and also the principal, the head of the department, and everyone for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much. When I understood that this is a FDP, so it's a faculty development program, then I was a bit surprised. Should I take this or not? That was my first question. Because, you know, most of the professors maybe here in this call may have the experience of my age. So I was thinking whether is it right to give at this point of time or not. Then later I thought, okay, let's consider like this way. You're all doctors and I'm a kind of a medical representative. So I'm going to give my formula to you and it's up to you whether you want to prescribe this to your students or not. That's your wish. Let's see whether I can deliver justice to this session or not. That's up to you to give me a feedback later point of time. I think Eileen has already told about me that I work for Mercedes-Benz for the infotainment systems and its vehicle infrastructure as a nutshell. So the topic which I thought I can take today is future of electric mobility. This is a how to say this, mobility is a kind of an accidental topic. So I will tell you why it has been an accidental topic. And now I can also tell you what is electric mobility and what are the challenges which you are facing today and the opportunities we have with respect to this topic of electric mobility or mobility, or what are the things associated with mobility or electric mobility. I mean, cool. You're audible and you don't have any interferences, right? I can continue now. Okay.
Yes, sir. You are clear, sir.
Okay. And ma'am, if there are any questions, should I take this question later or can someone interact in between and stop me and ask questions? It's also because
sir, at the
end of the session we can have the questions, right? Because then I will complete all the session. Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Then, okay. That first of all, what is mobility? How is this term in fact coined? Okay, let me take some generations back. You know, when the people who move from one place to another, who, what do we call them? Basically, we usually called them as nomad. The nomads were the people who move from one place to another place. But in latest trend, we call them mobile. Yeah. So when you can move from one place to one place to another place in a normal, so it means it's a kind of a commutation of a person from one place to another is called as a mobile. There are some words which were formed in a later technology in a different way. For example, in older days, if you are adapting to change faster, then you are called as a good evolver. Yeah, you can evolve faster. But today, the same term is called as agile. So who can adapt to change very easily. So the processes associated to be mobile or be agile, it's called as mobility or agility. So today we are speaking about only mobility topic. So then the question is, okay, how this word is coined? Yeah, the mobility. Because if you also see down, okay, let me also do a pen. Yeah. Previously, this mobility was generally termed as this taxi services. People used to call it as taxi services because we have seen many taxi services since our olden days. Many taxi services were there. Then everyone thought, okay, mobility is just taxi services, you know, because we all know the biggest mobility. When I ask someone, hey, what is mobility, then they will immediately term Uber, because they only know Uber. We have seen Uber as the major mobility shared services which we see. Yeah, okay. But this is wrong, because mobility is not just taxi services. It says, so when you know how this is formed, then you will realize, okay, that was my wrong perception, basically. So how this mobility came into existence? I want to tell you a small story which happened real time with Uber. Yeah, Uber. So Uber, you know, it's a kind of a ride sharing service which started in America. So what this Uber does? Uber also takes the people from one place to another. It is also kind of a taxi service, basically, correct? Then they want to scale this taxi service into a different way. They want to bring an application, and the application comes into mobile phones, and the mobile phone, the user can order a taxi at any point of time. Then he can order at any place. So it's not that you need a contact or a phone contact of a driver to call him to ask for a service. You can do it from any place. So which means that whole process itself has become so flexible, such that the commutation is not the only point of travel. It's also the service associated with the whole process is really the scenario. So then that's how the whole workflow of the Uber, what you see today, has been developed. And the whole process associated with the Uber services, for instance, you have an application, you can order, you can cancel, the whole flexibility. This whole process is called as the mobility services now. Okay. And is it all associated with mobility? Because if you also see the history of Uber, Uber was started with a small ride sharing services, but that was not all, because later Google interfered in Uber, and they told, okay, I will buy some stake from your company, and I will also make use of your service. What can Google do with a mobility service provider like Uber? Then we all know that what Uber does, Uber takes people from one place to another, right? So let's say in India, how many Uber customers are there who are using Uber application right now? We are a population of 150 billion. Don't consider this COVID scenario. If there were no COVID, yeah? If there no COVID scenario and you are in a normal scenario, let's say in the 150 billion people in our country, let's say 1% of people are using Uber application this time. I'm just calculating the least scenario. Usually it's 10% or something. Yeah? 15 million or 20 million people use Uber application at one single time. That's how the census says. So what is the use? So every customer uses application, and then everyone, this Uber has a direct tie-up with Google. So Google gets the data of the customers who are using. And because of this mobility services, we have the feature called as live traffic in Google Maps. Many of the people doesn't know about it. Because everyone see, okay, when you open Google Maps, if you want to go from one place to another, you see, okay, in this place, okay, there is a huge lot of traffic, and other place the traffic is lesser. You can plan everything from your mobile phone today. How is it possible? Google is not a god, basically, who can just predict your mobile phones just like that. Google needs data to predict whether there is a traffic there or not. And this data, where is this data coming from? These data coming from this mobility service providers. So this Google can have tie-up with Uber, Ola, QuickRide, etc., whatever. If they have money, they can tie up with any mobility service providers just to get the data. And what do we call that data? We call these data as probes. Okay, each customer is a probe. If there is a data coming from a mobility provider compared to a normal customer who is using a Google map, he's an individual. But in a mobility service, the data is an attribute. You know why? Because it's not the data of one person, it's the data of multiple person, the driver and also the customer. So you will have multiple attributes which we get from one service provider, Uber, of one vehicle. Let's say how many Uber vehicles are driving in the road, how many Ola vehicles are driving in the road. Then they collect these data, and these are going to be huge chunks of data. Okay, when these huge chunks of data goes into the backend of Google, because we intentionally we say that you can take our data, we sign the agreement. Okay, there's also already a consent, so it's not illegal, it's legal. So when we send this data back to the backend, this backend collect all this data, and they have to do a data analytics. And by this way, this big data analytics topic or the word is coined. This big data analytics, they have to optimize the data, and when they optimize the data, this data has to be processed and delivered to an application which is called as Google Maps. And using that Google Map application, that's a user interface. Using that user interface, the data or the content is visible to the customer. So what will happen between this data and the content once it is delivered to the customer? There comes all these kind of machine learning or an artificial intelligence algorithm. All these techniques comes into the picture. Or tomorrow, people also say, what is this augmented reality? Okay, when you have an application, if you want to see a 3D view of your maps, when you want to reach a junction or somewhere, then you show it in a different view, and maybe that is a kind of a real-time view. If you can really replicate the real-time view of the road into a mobile phone or into an infotainment system, then we call it as an augmented reality. But just take my word, where we started. We started with a discussion of mobility. Where we ended into a third-party application which is running somewhere. But in between this whole mobility to this third-party application, what we have gone through we have gone through different technologies we have heard in our daily life. Do you hear me right? You all hear me right? Hello?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir, you are audible, sir.
okay. So I was just saying, so we just started with a mobility and we ended into a third-party application, and the connection between a mobility and a third-party application, how it ended. So that's what is happening today. Everything in this world today is interrelated, but we don't see it. That's the major pitiful part. Okay. I think now you got how important this mobility is, how the process of mobility helps in creating an ecosystem, what we see in this world today. Okay. Now coming to the slides. Let me come back to the slide then. Okay. There is an urban mobility. So what is urban mobility here? There's when people now today, we are speaking about a city. If you just take Chennai as an example, there are many mobility services available. You have a metro right now, and you have an underground train service. You have a flight service. You have a taxi service. People have their own vehicles. There are also electric vehicles coming up, electric scooters coming up. Ride sharing services has gone to a different extent, such that it's not really ending up in a car, but also it is ending up in a scooter. It's in a bike, cycle, everything now. So the mobility has gone to a different level today. So that's how I'm just giving an example of how this mobility is picturized in an urban city today. And now there is also a mobility report which we got in 2021, which says that these kind of things can be made electric. So we know there's a car, there's a two-wheeler, there is a cycle, there's a bus, there is a truck. All these things can be made electric. So if we know that we can make this electric, okay, then this mobility report this is the mobility report of 2021. This is now the business case and also the goal or the vision for 2050 now. So people say that we need a vision for us to achieve. So for 2021, there is a vision which is already available. So they want to achieve all these things in 2050, but there are milestones in between. Okay, milestones in 2025, 2030, 2040, and 2050, something like that. So this is the mobility report of 2021. You can now imagine how this will go in future and how this will evolve and scale in future until 2050. Now comes to our subject, the future of electric mobility and why electric mobility. And before we go to the electric mobility, I also want to give a short history of electric vehicles. Do you think electric vehicles is a kind of a trend today? Yeah, there are many kind of electric vehicle technologies are coming, and many initiatives, many startups we have started for electric vehicles. And is it a current trend or was that there before? The question is yes, it was there before. Even the availability of the combustion engines or the gasoline engines, what we have today, people were using electric vehicles because if you see the history of the creation of a voltage, it is 1875. During that time, the battery technology was there, and people used zinc or a silver to create a battery technology. Yeah. Then after that, people started using the battery to drive the electric vehicles during that phase, during that time. But later, battery technology had a problem because battery has to be replaced. There was no major renewable or rechargeable battery processes, and the technology was available. So people were in so much desperate that they do not have much technology on the battery, and the vehicles were not moving faster. There were no major torque on the subject. There is no mileage towards the vehicle. So people were struggling in this whole area. So later, when the invention of combustion engine came, then later they realized, okay, the speed is not a problem, the mileage is not a problem, we can refuel the vehicle, you can run the vehicle. Then everyone stopped the electric technology and they moved towards normal combustion engines. And so, which means electric vehicle technologies are not a newer technology. It's we have to just stop thinking like that. It was an older technology, but we never used it. So now comes to the electric mobility. So which means mobility, you know, what is mobility? Now, what is electric mobility? The being mobile via an electrical technology is mobility. Okay, why this electric mobility? Let's say this is it will help us in have low emissions, so it is a sustainable environment which will reduce pollution. And that's why everyone are saying, okay, let's move towards electric mobility, because we want to save the world, we want to go towards green. It's a kind of a go green. Fine, everything is fine. So how electric mobility ecosystem has to be there? So I made this comparative use case with iRobot. Have you seen this iRobot? iRobot, this is a vacuum cleaner. iRobot is a vacuum cleaner. And if you have not seen this iRobot, please go to Phoenix City. It's also in Chennai. Okay, any Phoenix City. There is a showroom called as an iRobot showroom. You can also check there, so that you can really view how this iRobot works, because the demo is also shown there. And if you also want to see a demo, you can also check in YouTube how this iRobot really works. But now this iRobot was initially started, but later now it's like Eureka, and every company, they also manufacture such kind of robots which we can use it in our home. But how this iRobot really works? This is also running in electric, but it is so intelligent such that it knows, it is kind of a machine learning which runs inside the iRobot, which you have to tell them where it has to go. So wherever it finds a nook, corner, or a space inside the home, this iRobot will go into each space inside the house. Okay, and it will collect all the dust, it will keep your surface clean, and then when the charge is going to be reduced, it knows where the docking station is placed inside the house. It can come back to the same docking station and it can recharge itself. Sounds it's how to say, it sounds, it's a kind of how this really functions, or it's flamboyant. Yeah, it sounds so flamboyant that, okay, how this really happens, because you have a machine. That machine goes and cleans every part of your house, and it knows when it has to recharge, and it comes back to the docking station and it recharges itself. And it happens. So take my word, it happens. So since it happens, then I think consider this as an example. Now we can relate how you can define also an e-mobility ecosystem. So usually this vehicle should know, so what is the purpose of a vehicle? Instead of the robot, let's take a vehicle, electric vehicle. This vehicle, now it is charged and you want to go from one place to another place. So it takes you to a place, and while commuting from one place to another place, it should also know when it has to be recharged, and it also should find a docking station nearby, and it should also go to the docking station and recharge itself, and then it has to commute again. Right now, this kind of ecosystem is not available. This kind of technology in electric vehicles is not available. Exception is Tesla, but I think Tesla has some mechanism, but it needs a user interface, but still they have a mechanism how to do. But rest of the companies, they don't usually have such a mechanism. And then the charging can be recharged and it can run again by itself. So how will we define this e-mobility ecosystem? So this is how an ecosystem for a electric vehicles should be there. It need not be automatic by now, but it can also be manual, right? So you if you want to drive a electric vehicle today, let's take one example that you have an electric vehicle today. It has a mileage of 200 kilometers. And with the help of this electric vehicle, what you can right now do, you can drive to your office, come back. You can drive to your office and come back. That's all you can do. Or you can go to a nearby place which is like 100 kilometers or 80 kilometers, but you always have a scare or always have a fear in your mind that, okay, when this charge is going to be drained and how am I going to come back? Because with the fuel, it's not a problem, because you can refuel at some other station, or you can also look into your Google and you can try to find when this can be done. Yeah. But such kind of an ecosystem is not there. So that's why people are not buying the vehicles more. Instead, they are trying to move still to the combustion vehicles because they don't have the confidence to it. So how can we solve it in addition? So now we understood that the biggest problem is the infrastructure and the charging mechanism. So I just got this image and I found this interesting because it is also speaking about the connectivity, autonomous electrification, which I used the example of an iRobo. It is also has a charging station, yeah, and there should also be a charging station which is driven by solar and also wind. This can also be brought into a vehicle, because you also have the top floor which is still can be used as a solar panel, and we can still charge the vehicle. There's a possibility. And you can when you drive the vehicle, then there is a wind, because of the wind direction. We also have this aerodynamic efficiency, and the panels which is already available in the vehicle, we can also use it to generate electricity. There are multiple options, but we think people are exploring, but still not in place as of now. So there are multiple options are available how we can generate this charge and things. But moreover, we'll not go into that subject now, because we can also see this as a part of challenges and things. Okay, now let's go into the dependencies and challenges we have. And whatever I'm saying, most of the things are applicable to our country, India. But some things I will also compare with other countries, where what is available in other country and what is not there. Maybe that can be also a business option, business opportunity for many people. And because tomorrow, when you are, what I understand right now is, most of the faculties today, what they also do, they also want to guide people towards their final year projects, and they also want to there are some funds which are coming from the central government, so that you can also make use of the funds to make projects. So some things are also happening in the colleges. So maybe you can relate with the ideas which we are going to explore here. Maybe you can relate and find what is best and possible for you. Power grid adaptability. So what is this power grid adaptability basically? Biggest concern in India compared to other countries. I will tell you why it's in India and not in other countries, not in major bigger countries, but it's still in normal. The tier 3 countries are still there, but we are not still tier 3, tier 2. The power grid is like, we do not have, our population is of 120 billion. Yeah, in this 120 billion population, we do not have much power to even give to our countrymen. So when we don't have enough power to be provided to our countrymen, then how can we do a charging of our electric vehicles? Because also that also needs power. And people, what they are telling, okay, nuclear reactors, I mean, generating electricity by nuclear reactors are causing pollution, and people wants to shut up all these nuclear reactors, and they want to go towards a conventional method using the alternate electricities. This is very simple to say, but do we have enough mechanism? Because this is also region dependent. Even if you only take Tamil Nadu here, this non-conventional electricity mechanisms like wind energy or oceanic energy or solar energy, where will we generate? Can we do this everywhere? Of course, we can do it everywhere, but it also needs additional investment, additional infrastructure. But who will be ready to bear all these expenses? So which means now the power grid is available, but is it optimized is also a question. This is the question to the government basically, because we have the nuclear stations available at some places, and we can that's the way we are generating electricity and giving to most of our countrymen today. And if you see in Tamil Nadu, let's say Tirunelveli is one of the place, it's a hub for wind electricity, wind energy. There we can generate electricity using wind, and we have enough solar power. People also say about that, right? Because the solar power, we have huge sun and more power to the sun, but why can't we generate a solar electricity just like that? But there is a catch in it. We are not near the Arctic Circle. We are somewhere far from the Arctic Circle. So what we get from the sun is the heat, not the light. But to generate more electricity via solar, we need more light. That's the concept behind it. So when you have a heat, then you need a mechanism for the heat energy to be converted into electricity. That needs additional infrastructure. So now many people are using the solar things, but still they are not able to generate electricity because the problem is the demand is low. When the demand is low, then the cost is high. Everyone cannot afford it. Maybe the people who are on upper crust, maybe they're able to afford it. Maybe they can use it in their houses, and they can run their houses at some point of time. But even during the winter period, it's also fuzzy again. So we are anyway have to again rely on the normal government power grids. And if we start using more electricity, then the deficiency will come, then the demand will rise, then we don't have enough energy to meet. It will also affect the lower crust people. They will be affected, of course, because today most of the companies are being run with high power, but then we have to compromise for maybe 30 minutes of every day or something like that. We have to. But compared to the other countries, for instance, in let's say in Germany, you cannot have power cut, because if there is a power cut, then you can file a petition against the government, and you can file it in the court, and the government has to pay compensation to you. So if there are power cuts, then it has to be informed to the people much in advance so that they can plan their living. So such kind of phenomenon is not there in some other countries. So this power grid adaptability is especially for our country. So how we can attain a alternate source. So let's say we are speaking about electric mobility. So I am speaking from the vehicle perspective, whether we can generate the electricity via solar panel if we place on the top, or a wind via wind, because the wind whenever the vehicle moves, there is a huge flow of wind. Is there a possibility to make a small turbines and run the small turbines, and you can generate some electricity and use the AC to DC rectifiers to just pump this DC current back to the high voltage bus inside the electric vehicle? So this is an idea which we can also think about, making some small turbines which is cost effective, and which can also be placed in the vehicle, which should not be heavy weight, because it will also lose the mileage of the vehicle. So this is something else. Then the charging infrastructure. Okay, so this is another bigger problem we have, because we do not have a proper infrastructure in our country, because just like in our normal power fuel stations, we do not have a charging infrastructure. So what can we really do? That's a problem we have. The charging infrastructure is a problem. So if I want to say about the charging infrastructure, you also need to know what are the different kind of chargers we have for electric vehicles. There are like 3 levels of chargers available. It's called as level 1, level 2, and level 3. So this level 1 charger is something, it's a charger with 60 it's I think with a 120 volt. Yeah, it's a charger with 120 volt. This charger we can this is the normal charger. When you buy an electric vehicle, you can use it in your home. Okay, and this particular charger, this is also an AC charger. You can connect in your home, but the problem with this charger is if you charge your vehicle for 1 hour, you can only get, let's say, 6 miles or 12 kilometers or 15 kilometers with this level 1 charger. So this is a kind of a leased charger. No one wants to buy this level 1 charger, because why you want to charge it for an hour and you just want to use for 12 kilometers? Maybe you can keep this charger in your vehicle. If you are running short of battery, please plug it somewhere in nearby home or somewhere, because every home you will have minimum of 120 volt power, so that you can, just like that, it's kind of an emergency charger, you can say. Yeah, and you go to a home, just plug it in a home, just charge the vehicle for 1 hour, just drive to 12 kilometers until you find a charging station. Maybe a kind of a recovery mechanism. You can use this level 1 charger. What is a level 2 charger then? Level 2 is actually a 240 volt charger. This is the real charger, but this 240 volt charger needs assistance of an electrician, because this is a 3-phase charger. But the other one is for the single phase charger. It's okay. You can just plug it in your normal plug point and you can work. But here you need an additional infrastructure, because you need an assistance of an electrician. You have to have a proper interface in your home for this charging to be fit, and then you can power. It's a kind of a permanent charger in your home. So whenever you come back home, you plug the vehicle into you charge it into your vehicle, then it charges. Maybe this part for 1 hour, if you charge this with this level 2 charger, you get a mileage of 160 miles or maybe 200 kilometers. It's based on the charger, yeah, based on the vehicle, how it is developed. If it's a kind of a 60 kilowatt per hour vehicle, then it can generate, let's say, 160 kilometers or something miles, 60 kilometers of distance. And this, with the help of this level 2 charger, you can charge your whole vehicle in 2 hours. So level 2 chargers are something like that. But level 3 charges is complicated. You cannot use it in your home. You need a separate charging infrastructure, what you see in the normal parking lots, and where this level 3 is not only a AC, it can also be a DC charger. So it depends on what kind of charging mechanism you need. So it can be like a AC to AC charger or a DC to DC charger. It can convert. So the whole kind of mechanism is available, and the infrastructure cost of this level 3 charger is so high that you cannot afford it to keep it in your home. So that's why you need a separate place. So you need a separate slot. But if you have a house with a bigger space so that you can place this in your slot, it is fine. And you can also use plug points, or you can use a different chargers based on your vehicle thing. So it can be like a global charger. And that's the difference between the different charging. So which means for you to afford in a home normal condition, is level 2 charger. Level 2 charger is the most charges which is being provided while you purchase any electric vehicle. If you have your charger in your vehicle, in your home, it's fine. But you also need to have such a kind of a level 3 infrastructure across locations. How can we develop it? In China, they found a solution for it, because the China is also a crowded place. So in China, what they found, okay, it's not easy to find or to create a huge parking lot with a kind of a level 3 charging stations, because there are charging stations available in some parking lots available, but this is also very limited, because the number of vehicles in the country or in the city is so much higher, it doesn't meet the demand. So they moved 20 kilometers further outside the city. They found a huge vacant area, and it was a kind of a lease. So many private parties came together. They leased the plot, they constructed the charging stations, and they charged very less to the customers. Then the customers have started coming to the charging stations and coming on. Then they started using it. And the basic idea here is, if you go outskirt of a city, you will see so many vacant lands available. Then you need a small substation to be placed, and then you need a charging slot, charging infrastructure to be placed. But all of this needs extra cost. Who can bear this cost? How can we do this? It's also a question. Or maybe there is another option to develop the infrastructure, something like you can find a restaurant, because that's also a business opportunity. Because if you have a restaurant, then you can also approach the restaurants, ask them to provide some space, so that the people who comes for charging, they have to sit idle for 30 minutes or 1 hour, for charging the complete vehicle. No one will be idle. Maybe they can go to a restaurant, they can eat something, come back. So it's also a business opportunity. Both it's a win-win for both restaurant and the provider who is going to place this infrastructure. So it's up to you what we want to do, but basically charging infrastructure has to be developed, and we need to find an alternate way and multiple strategies to be brought how we can improve this charging infrastructure. And then the charging technology itself, the cost of the battery, but plus the power electronics constitute it's around, let's say, it's my third point, the 2/3 of cost of EVs. So what is this charging technology basically? What is this battery? So it's for sure we know it's the rechargeable battery, and the power electronics constitute 2/3 of cost of EV. So power electronics is something, if you see the whole architecture of an electric vehicle, you will have a separate charger in your vehicle, which will take the charge from the outside world, and it goes and charges a DC to DC charger inside the high voltage bus. Because if you also see the vehicle infrastructure as a whole, there is always a vehicle bus, okay, and all the ECUs are connected to the bus. So that's how the network architecture of a vehicle is always organized. So in your normal combustion way, maybe it's a CAN bus, or it can be a LIN bus, or it can be an Ethernet bus. But it depends on the luxury of a vehicle or the cost of the vehicle. The networks can be varied. And finally, all these buses are connected to an ECUs, and it will eventually go and control the mechanical components, and that's how the whole infrastructure is organized. So here in the electric vehicle, this is a very simple circuit. The electric vehicle is a very simple circuit compared to a normal combustion engine circuit. You have a vehicle charger, you have a DC-DC charger, which is connected to a bus, which is going to drive a DC to AC converter. Maybe it can be an inverter. Yeah? DC to AC is actually an inverter. That inverter generates an AC current, and that will going to run your induction motor. That's the electric motor we have. And this electric motor, which in turn goes and drives your transmission. And once the transmission is connected to the chassis, the transmission is anyway connected to the chassis, and the chassis is connected to the wheels, and the wheel rotates. Obviously, your vehicle moves. So this is very simple mechanism of electric vehicle, how it can work. And if you see the whole infrastructure, the 2/3 of this whole vehicle cost is with respect to battery and the power electronics, because there is nothing you need to spend to run this vehicle as a whole, because the mechanical components are very limited. You only need to make a body, and people, what they do, they are going with an aluminum body because this is cost expensive and it is lightweight. So when it is light, then you can also have more mileage to the vehicle. So which means as a whole, the whole weight of the vehicle, if you consider the whole weight, or if there is a 2,000 curb weight in a vehicle, I think the 60 to 70% of the curb weight of the electric vehicle is because of the battery placement. It's the size of the battery and the number of batteries you placed inside to generate the mileage, because we don't have a lightweight battery mechanism or a technology available today. And what is available today is one of the lithium ion which we use, and this lithium ion, it's still it's lightweight, It can produce a volt of 3.2 to 6 volt, and it's based on how many number of such lithium ion batteries you want to place it in which order, and that's how it generates the charging mechanism. Okay, and you also need to control the battery. So you need a right power electronics or a right controller. Basically, the controller is actually a power electronic circuit. So which means you also need a battery management system, or you also need an engine management system. You also need a braking management system. All these controllers also cost us. And if you want to place radio infotainment into the system, so it also needs an additional controllers, ECUs into the vehicle. So so then when we try to place all these additions into the vehicle, all into a normal electric vehicle, then the circuit becomes much more complex, and then we get. Then the cost of the vehicle also increases, because people doesn't want just a vehicle. People have already seen the normal combustion vehicles with much more luxury, and they also want to see the same luxury also in electric vehicles. And that's the trade which is currently being implemented in Tesla, and we all adapted it. Before that, we also had electric vehicles like Nissan Leaf and other vehicles, but they had very little charging. Technology was very limited. They didn't have the technology to lessen the temperature when it rises. So no proper cooling technology was placed in those vehicles. So those vehicles were not majorly successful. Those were only used for very limited purpose. But Tesla brought a balance between all these problems, and they found a common solution. And that's how today it's traded and it's successful, basically. So in a nutshell, charging technology is a major subject in an electric vehicle concept. To make it saleable, reliable, and also to be more flexible for our end customers. And vehicle mileage issues, of course, I think I have also covered this topic along with the charging technology, because charging technology is eventually the impact of whatever we are going to do with the charging technology is going to have an effect on the vehicle mileage. So today, Tesla can achieve around 600 kilometers of mileage with their current technology. Not only that, what Tesla has also done is not only they have achieved the mileage, they also brought reliability to their complete batteries. So what Tesla today tells us is they have tested their vehicle that it is reliable for 3,000 cycles of charging. So when someone says it is 3,000 cycles of charging, what does it mean? Take your calculator, just put 3,000 divided by 365. Yeah. So if you put 3,000 divided by 365, it gives you 8.2 years of reliability before you really want to change your battery. If you can bring an electric vehicle battery which is reliable for 8 years, it's a huge success. You know, previously people want to change the battery in 1 or 2 years, but now they are trying to bring a reliability of 8 years. And where they're heading towards, this charging technology is such that they want to create a reliability such that they want to test it for 10,000 cycles. So let's say then there is going to be a 10,000 cycle reliability factor which is going to come. Just divide this by 365, you are going to get a 27 years of battery reliability. That's how the technology is going towards in battery way. So which means when you have 25 years reliability, then you can use your vehicle in any way that your battery is not going to be damaged at least for next 10 years. Such kind of things are happening. Yeah. And all these technologies and advancements always has a cost associated. Even why this whole electric vehicles are so expensive is because very minimalistic people who are buying the vehicle, which means when the number increases, you always have a cost decreases, and there are very minimalistic of players who are in this game. So for instance, the battery technology, who has the best battery technology today? Only Panasonic has it. Because the same battery which is being used by Tesla and the same being used by everyone. No major suppliers, because in olden days, I still remember the first nickel metal hydride batteries were produced by Sony because Sony wanted to have a better reliability for their cameras, for their video cameras. So they started bringing the nickel metal hydride batteries into the market. So they promoted that. Before that, we've only had lead acid batteries, which we were using, which had the better technology for sure. It also had a better reliability. Lead acid batteries, because that were the batteries which were also used in the used in the vehicles, usually in the older days. Then the nickel metal hydride came, but it was so expensive because it was only used by Sony, and their cameras, people loved their cameras because their charging was good, their storage of memory was good, everything was perfect. And later the evolution of lithium ion came, and now even today lithium ion stands. Because only in lithium ion, there is only 2 different combinations which are being used by different people. For instance, there is a combination of nickel, manganese, and aluminum, and nickel, manganese, and cobalt. But it is associated with lithium. Yeah, there is a different solvent as an electrolyte they use only in the battery technology, so that that's the only two different categories of batteries which is used between different companies. But lithium still stands. Lithium ion is the only name. Only what are the ingredients inside it between anode and cathode, that doesn't matter. But it also depends on the cost. It also affects the cost. And the technology advancements. Okay, as I told you now, because when we, even in the battery technology, or I will also take another example of the electric motor, so it will also give you an idea. So let me also complete this technology of battery. So it was there in zinc and silver, zinc and silver combination in 1875. Later it also evolved to lead acid, and then it evolved to nickel metal hydride, and then it evolved to lithium ion, and now it still stays in lithium ion. So this is a kind of an evolution of battery which has happened. So now let's say, when people spoke about the electric vehicles, we also speak about the electric motors. And what kind of motors which we use? We usually use the induction motor. It's the same motor which is used in most of the electric vehicles today, the induction motor. What is this induction motor? So what is the principle of this induction motor? It's very simple, right? You have a rotor, it's a disc. You have a stator, which is coiled with some winding. You pass the electric field into the stator, and it creates a EMF inside the rotor, which is driving the rotor. So when it drives the rotor, then the electric motor rotates, and this rotates. This rotation helps in the flow of the driving the transmission, which drives the chassis, which drives the vehicle. Very simple process, right, of this induction motor. And what has changed today? Then they found, okay, this induction motor is fine. This runs continuously, good. But when you pass more load into the induction motor, it generates a back EMF. When it generates more back EMF, it reduces the efficiency of the electric motor in such a way that when you give more load, for instance, if the vehicle goes in a higher speed, or if you are in a slope, this back EMF is pulling the vehicle back because it needs more load. This back EMF is pulling the vehicle back, so that they are not able to meet that scenarios. So when you take the normal electric motor with nothing, normal induction motor into a slope, finally it eventually it stops in the slope, or you have to stop the vehicle in the slope, otherwise it comes back. Or if you go to higher speeds, automatically you see a lag, it tries to reduce the speed. So it doesn't go after a 1 RPM, it doesn't go more than that because of this backing issue. So they want to solve this problem. So we all have studied that if you place a magnet of a kind of a permanent magnet, if you keep it on the disk, it tries to solve that back EMF problem. Correct. Okay, good. So but I don't want to go into the in-depth of how this permanent magnet induction motor works or something like that. I'm just saying, when you place a magnet, it defines the polarity. So when the polarity is defined, so we can also move the vehicle based on the polarity. We can define it, when based on the movement of the poles. When you move it for the 1, 15, 20, or 45, which direction you want to move, it drives in that way. Then it addresses the back EMF problem. Fine, but it still have not addressed another problem, which is that when to cut and when to start. When I should do it, when should I introduce, when will this back EMF come, when should I go to this, when will I do this resisting part, when can I resist it, when can I exploit it. Then everyone thought, okay, let's also bring some iron pieces along with the magnet. So when the iron pieces are also placed in the disk, so it also we can define when we want to run this, when we want to generate high torque, when we want to generate medium torque, when we want to generate lesser torque, or maybe when we don't even need a torque, the vehicle runs into a smoother conditions. So it addresses all the scenarios by placing one iron piece into it. So then people called it as reluctance motor. Since you place a single iron piece on it, so it's a single reluctance motor. And when you combine the whole process, it is called as the induction permanent magnet single reluctance motor, which is the current phenomenon of Tesla motors. So that's how they achieved the whole scenario of this electric motor technology. So I've just took out all these pieces of how they coined this word of IPM Sinaram motor. This is how the Tesla motors call their motor name, electric motor. Their technology is called as IPM Sinaram. So it's a kind of a synchronous reluctance motor, induction permanent magnet synchronous induction motor. So this is a kind of a technology which they came up with today, but this is just today. What I'm saying is there are lots of improvement, there are lots of innovation and invention possible even in this particular today. Maybe they are not right all the places. When we want to understand how this really works and how the phenomenon really works, technically, if you go into detail, we can all still do some researches on this, how this really works today and how can we do a small changes. Maybe they placed one iron piece here, why can't I place a 2 iron piece? People are also thinking why we should only go for the induction motor, why can't we go with just a DC brushless motor, then we don't even need an inverter, directly this high bus can drive the DC motor, which will be more efficient. Things are happening. So this kind of technology advancements are already happening. We can still contribute. There are more room to contribute. Then low demand results in the high cost of EVs. This is very simple. I think you already know this from the statement itself. People are not using it. So when people don't use it, when you don't get a buyer, then there is no point of making a product. So how do we, as a buyer, can I get it today? I'm a fanatic driver, basically. I am passionate towards this automotive subject, and that's why I'm in Mercedes today. And I love to drive. I love cars, basically. I love the way the electric motor functions, because when I drove this electric motor, I got flattered completely that the machine works like something. It works like a V8 engine. Yeah, if you know about the different way the combustion engine is functioning, you have like four cylinder, 6-cylinder, and 8-cylinder engines. It works like the normal Tesla or a normal electric vehicle. Works like Lamborghini. Yeah, Lamborghini has a V8 because it's because of the torque and the power it delivers outside. That's why if you're a crazy driver, you love to drive a V8 engine. The same, it's not same. It's more power than a V8 you can generate in an electric motor. Because when you give a throttle, it moves like something. You love it when you want to drive an electric vehicle. But considering a practical user, will I buy it? It also based on the dependencies we have. Will do I have a proper infrastructure? Because since I work on a Mercedes company, I can still go and get it because my company has a charging infrastructure, my society has a charging infrastructure. And if I am going from company to office, office to company, I'm very happy to get one electric vehicle. But if I want to go from one location to other location, for instance, from Chennai to Bangalore, can I afford a electric vehicle? That's the question we have. How can we make it happen? Is the question. Within a city, there's no problem today, even in India. We can get it. Just go and get it. I would say anyone, because you are saving the environment, you are saving the fuel, everything you are saving on the end of the day. If you consider the whole running cost of it, it's going to be very lesser. So you can go and get it. And if you increase the demand of EVs, the cost is going to come down. So everyone can afford it. Everyone can afford this part, yeah. Then comes the challenges. I think we covered this last time, sometime before, that finding an alternate current charging source is also a topic we want to handle. Yeah, alternate charging source, the solar energy or wind energy or maybe heat to energy, because the energy is the only one form which we can transform from one form to another. But always, if you can transform energy into an electricity, that's good for everyone. And reduction of EVs battery plus power electronics. Yeah, so which means now we need to find a way. I would also like to give an example to this. For instance, for a battery technology, we spoke about this lithium ions, and this lithium along with the nickel, manganese, and aluminum as an anode. Here, this is cost. This is on the lesser cost. Okay, nickel, because it's an aluminum. There is another lithium combination with nickel, manganese, and cobalt. This cobalt is available in most of the South Africa. It's lying around everywhere. But if we start using this cobalt today, we can use it for this current generation, but there will not be any cobalt remaining for the next generation. So we will consume all of the cobalt. So that's why this nickel, manganese, cobalt is a bit more expensive. I was thinking, okay, because everyone speaks about, we are all engineers, we consider, right? Okay, we are all engineers, let's say in that way. What is the, should we stop our thought process in only developing the circuits or developing the ECUs, or let's do a project with a Raspberry Pi. We can run a load, we can run a program. It's very good, we are done, right? This is not, because that was my perception when I completed my engineering, and even during my 5 years of my first tenure in many companies, I was thinking in that way. But when I joined Mercedes, I realized, because this relation came 4 years before, I was totally wrong. If I am an engineer, I should not think from this perspective of only the circuit diagram. I was an electrical and electronics engineer. I was thinking, I am an expert in electrical and electronics, I will only do electrical and electronics. No. Why would we just like that? Because when I looked into this battery technology, the chemists who are all working, who also understood physics, who also understood how they can run a component. So they knew everything. When you know the whole scenario as a whole, then you become really a scientist. Sorry to say, in today's world, people get doctorates by filing their thesis, but no one proceeds with the, I cannot say no one, most of them doesn't proceed with the thesis to the next level. And they always want to go to a post-doctorate fellowship, and they always want the title. Only very few, they also get the degree, and they also get also get into the subject and do the next level, because they realize that the combination is completely different. This battery management system is an ECU, correct? Battery management system is an ECU which can really work in a circuit using a MOSFET or a capacitor. You place a resistor, you place a diode. It runs it works as a switch. It knows when to control the battery, when to release the battery. This can be handled, because this is also the same phenomenon which happens in a burglar alarm or a fire alarm. Yeah, the same MOSFET is placed with a capacitor so that you can trigger the buzzer at any point of time. This is also acting as a switch. The same MOSFET, you put it in a bigger array, and you can also make a SD RAM or for the memory. The same MOSFET, you can also use it on a 2 billion you can use the MOSFET as a transistor and make 2 billion transistor. You can fetch it to one chipset, and you can call it as an i7 processor. This is possible. But is it all from an engineer is a question. Because when I realized that nickel, manganese, and aluminum has a proposition and it provides an effect, yeah. And similarly, nickel, manganese, and cobalt also produces the same effect. But no one thinks about producing nickel, manganese, or cobalt separately, because that's the success of China today. They take the subset of every project. If you see, there is a MOSFET transistor is there. They work on each part of it, and one company only focuses on one part. If they manufacture a cathode, that company only manufacture a cathode. If the manufacturer makes an anode, they only makes the manufacturer of anode. Or if they makes one transistor of BJT or an MOSFET, they only manufacture that. And they manufacture that with different current values, different things. That's how the companies are placed, and that's where they were successful today. Today, China is considered as a hardware hub. It's no magic here. What they did is they made companies. They organized the companies who only work on one concept. For example, an iPhone display. iPhone display is also coming from China. Samsung display also coming from China. LG display also coming from every company's mobile phone displays comes from China. There is no other company. There is no other country who manufactures it. iPhone gets a display from one company. The similar company also manufactures a different display associated with the iPhone. They call, for them, it's not an iPhone display or a Samsung display. It's just an LED for them. There's an LCD for them. They have their sub-suppliers who makes this single LEDs different places. How they format this LED into a display, it's a different process. This is happening in a different company. Finally, they integrate and make one display, and that's what we call it as iPhone display. We don't have such a mechanism today here. We think that we only do this. We can only do this. But now I think the ideas are changing. People started thinking in a different way. Why can't we also make more sub-suppliers? Because this is what the main strategy behind the Make in India product. But people are still not flexible to take this work, because they think we have a boundary to do some work. Okay, that's our mindset. Let's not think about that. Then building an ecosystem. Okay, I will speak about this ecosystem in the next slide, because I also spoke about the electric vehicle things, but I also want to speak about some ecosystem for 15 minutes, because this is also a trend which is happening today in our country, because we want to make a smart city. So when we want to make a smart city, first of all, we want to identify which are the smart cities which are going to come in our country or in our state or in our district, and what can we really do as part of the smart city. That's the biggest business opportunity which we have today. And I think many researchers and projects are even going in many colleges. That's what I heard, that which can be part of the smart city. And exposure of electric vehicles. Many people even doesn't know. People even don't have a confidence of how they want to take further and how they want to really do with this electric vehicles. So we want to also create campaigns, give great exposure, and we also need to bring them the confidence of how these electric vehicles work and what are the benefits of this, how can we take it forward, how much reliable this is, how much cost efficient this is, how much service cost efficient, everything. We have to bring a campaign and we have to create awareness to the people so that they will buy it, electric vehicle. So once we increase the demand, it will also help us in lessening the cost of EVs. So what do we do now? Okay, so what the government does today? I think you all would have heard all these things in the news, that they have defined the regulations on emissions and fuel efficiency. I think in Delhi, they have totally stopped the diesel vehicles in India. Sorry, in Delhi, but the diesel vehicles are still running in our country, but not in Delhi. They stopped in Delhi because of pollution, because they felt the emission norms in diesel are quite high, and the environment is creating more pollution because they want to reduce something in one or the other way. Instead of doing some other things, they are doing this stoppage of diesel vehicles. That is considered that as one norms which has come from government. And after seeing this, I think Volkswagen, I think today they have stopped all their diesel vehicles in India. They are only providing petrol vehicles to the customers. There are no diesel vehicle variants itself for Volkswagen today. And some of the other companies are still providing diesel vehicles, but with all the norms to be followed, but we also have to follow the BS6 norms and things like that. Then and some norms are still there, but I do not know how long this diesel vehicle is going to exist in the market, because the government is saying that the petrol vehicles have less emissions, so they're promoting people to buy petrol vehicles. And government also wants the people to move towards electricity, and that's why they are increasing the prices of petrol and diesel. I think it has touched the century mark now, but I don't know how long it is going to go from now onwards. But it's be cautious. The running cost is going to increase with combustion engines. This is for sure. Next 3-4 years, if you are holding a petrol vehicle or a diesel vehicle, we'll be scared to take the vehicle even. Just imagine the cost which was incurred to run to do a full tank of your vehicle 2 years before and now. In 2018, the petrol price was 76 rupees, sorry. 76 rupees, and today the price is 100 rupees. It has increased 24 rupees per liter. If you have a 40-liter tank, and for one full tank of your vehicle, you have to spend 40 into 24 rupees. It's more than 900 rupees you want to have to spend if you want to go to your hometown at one stretch now. Extra 900 rupees. It's not a single money. It's not a smaller money in India, because the ideal living price of a Indian citizen, it's 1,800 rupees. It's half of the money. It's 900 rupees for one full charge of 40-liter tank. It's half of an Indian citizen's money. So it's not that a small money. So if in case it goes 20 rupees more, the same 900 rupees increase also comes in next 2 years. So we should have by now realized and thought about an alternate option, because within a city, if you really want to drive, why can't we move electric? Electricity is there in our home, electricity is there in our company or in a college, everywhere we should have. Why can't we start using it? At least it will save your day-to-day cost by a greater number. Yeah, for sure. And exploring incentives and subsidies. This is a mimic, but still it's there. The electric vehicles are provided with lesser the lesser tax, because we only need to pay 5% tax of the vehicle compared to 20% and 30% of the not normal combustion engines. It's a big difference. And if you are buying a car with 1 CR, because today Tesla vehicles are costed 1 CR today, and other BMW and Mercedes vehicles are also costing around 90 lakhs or 1 lakh. There, if you see, if you want to buy a normal Mercedes vehicle or a BMW vehicle or a Audi or somewhere a vehicle, the ex-showroom price to the normal the final price, you have to spend around 18 lakhs to 19 lakhs in as a so the difference between the ex-showroom and the on-road price, because of the RTO regulations, tax, insurance, and things like that. But here, when it comes to electric vehicle, you don't need to spend that money. Only the ex-showroom value plus your 5% of your taxes. So which is quite lesser, because 15% difference in a 1 CR vehicle is around 15 lakhs. It's a huge money. So that's how the incentives and subsidies comes. But when it comes to a 10 lakh or a 12 lakh EVs, for instance, Nexon EV or something like that, it is you save 20% or 2.4 lakhs, or you only spend 60,000. So you also save 1.8 lakhs of your tax in a normal 12 lakhs vehicle also. So the savings are always there. Developing a supportive ecosystem. So when people buy more vehicles, what will happen is the service guys also needs to create a proper infrastructure. Today, the companies doesn't want to invest money, because if will people buy an electric vehicle, still an uncertainty. Because why buying this electric vehicle is an infinity is an uncertainty, because it's if you see the history, it has happened before. Because as I told you before, electric vehicles were there before even the combustion engines were there. So during that time, people just like that moved to combustion engines because it had a better mileage, and it had a better power and things like that. They didn't consider the environment. Now we have agencies and regulations from everywhere. They want to preserve the environment. Because of the sustainability topic, everyone wants to move electric, and this is a forceful nature. Yeah, this is nothing by coming by our own. This is forcefully, we are being forced to do this, because to preserve the environment, because we are not thinking from that perspective that we have to save it. It's someone puts the pressure on us, and we are just doing it. So if we all have the thought process that we can move to electric by now, we can also support the ecosystem like that. If we start getting more vehicles and things like that, then the government and also the company should also finding the ways to implement the infrastructure, so we can work together as a whole. So when the companies gets the confidence that they sell this many number of vehicles, okay, if they want to consider infrastructure, then they will do it. So something like if you sell only like 10 vehicles or 20 vehicles in a rural area today, you will not have petrol bunk in your village, because we have, I think, say 60% or 70% of our Indian country is rural. So do we have every petrol bunk in every rural area today? Very few, because even inside the rural, you have a crust level already separated. If that village is a big village, okay, you will have one petrol bunk there. Otherwise, you will not have a petrol station there. You also have to come outside to take the petrol station, but you also have highway patrols. So the villages are making use of the highway petrol stations, and they are living like that. So there is a trade-off here and there. And the power, fuel, and the charging infrastructure companies. Okay, then now they are also bringing some new business models For example, leasing of batteries, swapping infrastructure, and deploying fast chargers. So deploying fast charger is what I was speaking about, the charging infrastructure which they implemented in the China market last time, that we find outskirt of some city places, and then we will just implement a charging infrastructure, the level 3 charging infrastructure, so that people can make use of it. There is also a mechanism. People were thinking, why can't we lease the batteries? So there can be shops or places where you can exchange the batteries or buy the batteries and keep it, so that on the go, if you are running short of battery, we just replace the battery. And maybe we should also bring a way how easily we can replace the battery, or some stops, like a pit stop, or a shops, or some we can also create a franchise here. It's like we lease the batteries or we swap the infrastructure. We can create here and there. This is also a kind of a business model, which companies and even government, they are also thinking from that perspective. The second one is also considered, because it gets the fast charging infrastructure work. This has to work. Then I think people can move from one city to other city very easily. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Providing stable power supply and grid stability. This is also a big uncertainty part, because government has to invest lots of money in doing this stability and in this power grid stability, and finding alternate unconventional electricity sources like solar, wind energies to meet the demand of this electric vehicle infrastructure. From the automotive industry, so now, previously, I think, how many models we had in our company? We had only EQC was there, I think. Only EQC was there in our portfolio since last 2 years. Now, I think we are going to bring more and more electric vehicle portfolio in our company itself, which means the demand has gone higher. There is a stats which says 2 years before, the demand of electricity was around 5%, which has increased to 18%. And this stats can go up to 56% in 2050. It's what the stat says. It's a stat across the world. Yeah, we are not saying about the stat at one region. It's about the world. So let's say that we have, let's say in India, we have 18% of people who will buy an electric vehicle. 18%. It's 120 billion and 18%, which is more than 30 billion people who will buy an electric vehicle. It's the stat says that if we bring more and more EV portfolio today, people are willing to buy it. 18% of today's population, 30 billion. And if you see, this is the number of vehicles which is running in India today. If I speak about the Maruti segment or the Tata segment, they have the 50%, and the Maruti has the 51% shares in Indian automotive industry, and they have not brought the EV portfolio as of now. But considering this demand, they are also bringing. So if we have such a kind of a portfolio, and if you have 18% of people who will start buying the vehicles in next 4 years, take my word, in 2025, we will not be speaking like this. We will be maybe speaking more technical on the electric front. We will not be speaking about confidence level or demand. No, we will be speaking about how we can make it better in next 4 years. So next 4 years is a kind of a transformational period, which will happen even in our country. You can also see many changes which will come. If we can adapt to the change, and that's what I spoke about in the first time, about being agile. If we can adapt to change as fast as possible, if we can also evolve along with the world, we will be profitable. That's all I can say. We will be profitable. Building the right talent pool and skill set. So this is another big problem. The few people in our country has such a knowledge of how to build this talent pool and skill set. I believe that when Tesla comes into this country, I think the skill set will improve and the talent pool also will improve, because the people who work in this automotive world only has this knowledge. I think outside world, very few has a knowledge of how this electric vehicle works, how this. So there's also a requirement of how to improve the learning towards this whole digital automotive and autonomous driving, ADAS integrations, how this ADAS works, advanced driving assistance systems works. I believe that we had a course called as automotive engineering. It is still there today, but I don't know how is the curriculum being defined today. Maybe if there are like autonomous colleges or the the associations or the consortium who defines the curriculum, they also should change based on the current requirement. They should also bring elective subjects which is also concerned with the electrical engineering or electric vehicle technologies and the battery technologies, advanced driver assistance technologies, probably hypervisor technologies, the RTOS, yeah, real-time operating systems. Today we have like QNX, Linux, Android, many operating systems are there. We also need to bring such an elective subjects so that if the students, if they're liking to study the subjects, they can also learn it, because they once they learn the base, because as we all know, what we learn in the college, it's not the latest. I think we all agree to this point. I don't think that we all disagree to this point, because uh, when I studied, I was a passed out of 2008. We studied the subjects which was written in 1970s or sometime. Yeah. So here, when we came out of the subject, then everything was quite new for us. Okay, because it took more time for us to gel into the recent technologies, because we studied the basic. It was good because the curriculum was also defined in a way that everyone can understand. This we all agree. But when we came out, it took at least 2 years or 3 years for a person to gel into the subject, and then he realizes and merge with the technology. Yeah, this is not about the potential topic of the whether the student has a potential or a person has a potential. No, this is not the topic of that. This is how we mold a person. Because right now, what I see here is the curriculum is defined in a way that it is available for everyone. Everyone can study it, but the flexibility is not there. That whether a student can study a particular subject at a different semester. For instance, a student has to study the whole semester topics which is defined from the scratch until now, until 7th semester, only in 8th semester, or I don't know now how it is, but in 8th semester you can select your electives of 3 or 4 subjects. But people even doesn't, but even today's students even doesn't realize what is the use of the elective subject. Even I didn't realize during my studies. Now I realize that I missed that part. Improve the performance of batteries. So this is another topic which we told you. Yeah. Today, I think there is also, when I speak about the lithium ion battery, what is also happening is, if you see the functioning of the battery itself, there is an anode and a cathode. The electron will move towards, right, towards the graphite crystal. Yeah, and this in there the lithium ions are stored. Yeah, the electrons are stored. Then the lithium ion is it's a unstabilized metal. So when you have lost its stability, it moves from its it has the positive ion, it goes move and attracts towards the electron, and that's the flow of electricity happens. Then the charge is stored in the graphite, and from the charge, when the discharge happens, and it comes to the normal state, and that's how the whole process of battery happens. So graphite is a bit expensive today, so that's why the battery cost is also on the higher side a bit. But if we can replace this graphite by silica, because silica is the biggest breakthrough even for almost every power electronic or electronic small items, yeah, because every transistor and everything is made of silica. So if we can replace also the graphite by silica, then the cost will reduce 6 times down. So it can also, if it can also improve the performance of the battery by this doping mechanism, we don't know how it can go. This is all the technology advancements, which is also happening at the battery side, technology advancements also happening at the electric motor side, how we can make it more efficient, how we can improve the bus mechanism, can we make a different vehicle infrastructure so that we can make more effective, because it's not the motor which has to work to make the vehicle drive, it also the features which we also want to bring in. I don't know whether you have seen the EQS launch, because if you have not seen, please also watch the Mercedes EQS launch, which is also an electric vehicle. It's an S-Class electric vehicle. You can see there will be 3 displays. It's not only, you will have only seen one display of infotainment system, but you will also three displays, like one for the driver, one for the central cockpit display, and then the third one will also be there for the co-driver display. You'll also have a rear unit display. You also have to power all these displays. So it's not about the electric vehicle alone, it's also the luxury, it's also the sustainability, it's also the ecosystem, the whole integration of ADAS, telematics, everything comes into one package. You can also watch it in the EQS. I'm not saying that it is not going to come tomorrow. It's maybe it's already launched, or it will be launched in a month. So the technology is already available, but how we are going to make it advanced? This is the exploration right now, which is ongoing. You can see this in next 2 or 3 years. We will see more and more breakthroughs in all parts of this whole process. Didn't I use it? Okay. And I also want to touch one more point before I stop. Building an ecosystem. We speak about the smart city. Yeah. What is actually a smart city? Everyone wanted to make smart. I think I had a joke, because I right now live in Ranipat here. Ranipat is a. People think that they want to make it smart though, so they painted the bridges. Then they saw we are becoming a smart city, so we are starting here by painting the bridges. I don't know whether I should crack fun on their joke, or should I feel pity to them. Smart city doesn't start from painting or something. We have to build it. And most of the cities which we have, it's not completely planned. So when we want to really focus on making a smart city, we need a kind of a planning where basically, if I am only speaking about the automotive, then I need a proper road, I need a proper terminals, or the traffic lights, or the organization. I need a proper speed limiters, and I need a proper payment where the users can walk, and I need a proper protocol for the customers to understand and work. And we need a proper mechanism of the monitoring this traffic control system, and then we should be a hub where should have all the things. And we also we are speaking about an electric vehicle system, then we need a charging infrastructure, we need a way it can also, whether we can make a smart and intelligent navigation system within our car, so that it can also find its charging station, just like considering the iRobot, alternate energy mechanisms. Then what else? I think if we are speaking about an ecosystem, then we have to make all the connected ecosystem. Then it's not only that, so we also need an internet facility. I don't know how this 5G will work tomorrow. If the 5G is going to come, we expect that the speed is going to be in gigabytes per second. Yeah, it's not like 100 Mbps or 2 gigabytes per second, something like that. It is going to be in like 200 gigabytes per second or 300 gigabytes per second. That's how the 5G technology is going to come. So when you have such a kind of a bandwidth, then how can you utilize this bandwidth by providing a right mechanism of internet so that the security is maintained, the user data is not compromised, the data privacy is handled, and if you also can bring all in a more connected way. For instance, for example, I can also say there's an Alexa integration. This Alexa integration is also from Amazon, right? So what does this Alexa integration do? Basically, you can control via your mobile app whether some lights in your home is closed or not. How this functions, you control it via app. This connects to your home via Wi-Fi, and then this Wi-Fi functions. So you can control your whole whole home environment via a single app using Alexa. So this is the kind of an integration just like that. I also remember a few years before, I saw an air condition advertisement, and the advertisement was so cool. So it was telling you that when you enter into your car, you have an air condition. You go to your office, you have an air condition. Then why shouldn't you have air condition in your home? This marketing ad is right. So similarly, tomorrow we will have more and more utilities which will come, which will help us in identifying or saying that, hey, this will help you in integrating your home, your office, your car, everything in a different way. So this is a more connected technology. And right now we speak about the connected cars. What I'm speaking about is a connected ecosystem. So when we have a connected ecosystem, electric mobility and things are part of it. And how this mobility can scale to a different level now. You have bought a vehicle. This is part of the autonomous, okay? It's not part of the electric vehicle. I'm speaking about an autonomous mobility. So you bought a vehicle, which is an autonomous vehicle. So this autonomous vehicle, this vehicle doesn't have a driver. It drives you to the company. It leaves you out. And this car can also considered as a mobility service vehicle. So if someone can, if you're associated with a application like Uber or Ola or someone like that, then then the person can order your vehicle. Then this vehicle can pick, and so it will also, it's not only a vehicle for you to commute, it also brings you business. So this is also a kind of a mobility expansion which is also being planned. How we can use use the customer's vehicle instead of procuring or investing money as a capital for the vehicles alone. So this is a mobility expansion. But for this to function, you need this smart ecosystem. This to be the basis for creating a smart city, basically. I don't know how the smart city is basically planned and is being built. I hope people will all keep all these attributes and parameters in mind in building an ecosystem. Roadmap. So right now, these are the roadmaps which are coming now. Localization of battery technology. This is already being in the pipeline. And localization of power electronics development associated with electric vehicles. Right now, China is the master in bringing all the power electronics hardware. But if we can also make some small pieces of electronics in India, and then we can also integrate it and make it as a form of a PCB board, and eventually it evolves as an ECU. So today we are looking for more and more sub-suppliers who can make such small sub-supplier components. Yeah, for example, a DSP chip or a power management controller, or maybe a PCIe small RAM, or a ROM flash memory, or a UFS memory. Who can provide some such a small piece of components? Then we can try to give bulk orders. So this is what is being looked from every automotive. It's not only the automotive company; it's also the industrial equipment companies, industrial automation companies, from the other domain companies who are really working with hardware. They are really looking for these kind of small suppliers where they can get some efficient and cost-effective components, which we also get it in India. It's easy that we get it in a lesser price, and also we also have the accessibility. If I want to increase the demand, I can go to the person by inspect him. I can also validate his process. I can also validate his quality, everything. We can do also if we have a localization. Smart city development, I spoke to you about smart city development. How should we think on the smart city development, on what are the attributes and the parameters we should keep in mind so that we can create a connected ecosystem. This is the plan, 2030. Government plans to roll out electric vehicles to save 1 gigaton of emissions. This is the vision we have. And already, I think in 2021, in most of the other countries, I think they have already sold more vehicles, and we have the stats available. And in India, this is still evolving. Maybe in 2025, we will see a different transition. Maybe in 2030, I think we're expecting that government will achieve this target. Thank you for your time. And now I am again open to queries.
Sir, from my side, one query, sir. Some of the research articles say fast charging technique will degrade the battery life. Whether the fast charging technique will reduce the battery life, sir?
Okay. I would tell you one more point for this. Have you ever heard of people saying that when you buy an electronic item, first please charge it for one full time, and then if you have to complete your charging the whole time, and then I think the battery will be efficient for you. I mean, we have heard about people saying this, right? That when you when you buy electronics, please go and put it for the charging. The whole, it has to become 100%, and the first 3 times you charge it for 100%. Then after that, your battery will be like so strong, and you will have a better battery life. So that's what people are saying. This fast charging is also kind of a mechanism, but in the last 20 years, there is a solution already available, and this is also an accidental solution. Ma'am, this is a very good question, because this accidental breakthrough is called as solid electrolyte interface. Okay, this solid electrolyte interface, which was also found when there was a abnormal pass of charge to the battery. So what happens here is there is an electrolyte. Okay, there is an electrolyte, and there is a solvent in the electrolyte between the anode and the cathode. That's how the battery is organized. This lithium ion, when you have an abrupt or an abnormal amount of voltage which is going to pass, so what it does is like this lithium mixes with the solvent, and when it reaches the other side of it, this lithium and ion together forms a layer in the anode direction. Okay, in the anode direction, so that electrolyte and the lithium mixes and it becomes a layer. That layer is called a solid electrolyte interface. Okay, and if this interface is not there, what will happen is these electrons, when it comes to the graphite crystal or the place where it's going to store the electrons, these electrons always come and hitting this electrolyte every time, and these electrons have to usually do not touch the electrolyte. It has to go through the other side to reach the lithium metal oxide, usually, because lithium as a metal, it's unstable, but when it is mixed with the lithium metal oxide, it is quite stable. So this solid interface helps in electrons not to touch the electrolyte directly. Instead, it just touches this interface, and it will help us in increasing the battery charging life. Here in the fast charging mechanism also, what we are doing is we are intentionally creating this solid electrolyte interface when we start the first charging of an electronic device. Okay, when you buy an electronic device, it's a new device, you charge it for the first time, this particular electrolyte is created. So this electrolyte will help us in increasing the battery life of it. Okay, and there is only one catch in it. if your electronic device is going to support the fast charging, please always put your your device to the fast charging first, then you put a normal charging. Because what will happen is, if you apply your device to a normal charging mechanism for the first time, what will happen is this solid electronic interface which will be created, it will be capable to handle the normal charging. It will not be it will not be taking the fast charging mechanism. So if you put fast charging later point of time, then it may lead to a reduced battery life. At the same time, right now scientists what they have done is they have optimized this solid electronic interface in a way that the interaction between the electrolyte and the electrons will be no more there, which will also increase the battery life. And this fast charging will not degrade the battery life. This is a wrong consumption, because when you have a fast charging mechanisms, scientists have defined in the way that solid electrolyte interface will create in such a way that it will not even degrade the battery. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Did it
Thank you,
answer
sir.
my question? No problem.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
From NSI Hyderabad. So I'm having a small question from my end, sir. So actually, when going for the charging, you have been given level 1, level 2 charger, and charging can be done in home and charging can be done in the common place. So as per the charging thing, we'll be having the vehicle coming as of now. Vehicles having coming with the different types of we can say plug and socket for charging the thing. In that thing, any mechanism is there to standardize these types of chargers? Sir? Anything is there, sir?
Okay, I got your question. You are asking about the standardization of the chargers, right?
Exactly. Because if, for example, Honda is coming with one type of vehicle, having one type of option for charging the vehicle, and Tata is coming with the vehicle with having a different option of charging thing. If I'm going for public place for charging, whether charger and this vehicle, both the thing getting coincidence, I'm asking you.
Right now, not. Because currently it's not, because
it will be difficult, because if you're going for common charger, where the government is in future going to other public charging station, then they should have more number of charger points, correct, sir? For shooting different types of vehicles.
But the one point is that the charging norms are same. Okay, for instance, the plug is going to be the different, but even for the definition of the plug, there are also ISO standards. So every company has to follow this ISO standards. I think there are only 3 different types of plugs available today. Okay, these 3 different plugs are also associated with the AC to DC or the DC to DC conversion charger, because there is already an onboard charger in every vehicle. It is also dependent on that charger, because if we want to bring such a norm, then we should also instruct all the automotive companies to come with one kind of charging mechanism. Either it has to be an AC to DC only or DC to DC only. So it also depends on the strategic decision of every company. So maybe for your question, maybe in coming days there can be one norms for AC to DC and DC to DC alone, instead of right now what we have is a multiple charging mechanism. Maybe we can end up with 2 charging mechanism alone. Exactly. This is possible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Participants, any other questions?
Or if you do not, even if you do not have questions, it's fine. But if you have any questions, you can take my number and the email ID. And I'm also in LinkedIn. You can also write to me in LinkedIn separately. I can answer if I know it. Otherwise, I can guide you where you can see it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If there are no questions, then maybe it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But ma'am.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
There will be a formal conclusion here, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to invite Mrs. Karthika, ma'am, Assistant Professor of E&A Department, to propose the vote of thanks. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, one and all present here. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of the Department of Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our resource person, Mr. Karthik Jodhilakshmi, Principal Engineer, Mercedes-Benz, Bangalore, for gracing his busy schedule and enlightening us with the knowledge on the future of electric mobility in India. It's indeed a wonderful and informative session, sir. We are really enriched with your knowledge and presence. I also appreciate and thank all the participants for attending this session with complete involvement. Once again, I thank you all for being with us this session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you also to Chilambu Selvan sir for giving me this opportunity, and everyone for your kind patience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you, sir.